As Rick and Morty enters its 6th season, it's begun to face an issue that a lot of animated TV shows have, which is their characters not appearing to age over the course of many years. Many animated series get away with living in a bit of a timeless realm, but with Rick and Morty, we have not only a serious backstory for Rick spanning many decades, but multiple holiday specials with the kids remaining the same age within the show. Morty even asks how old they are in the most recent Thanksgiving episode, making me wonder if the show finally decided to make their time issues canon and are starting to hint at it in the episodes. And after we saw what Rick did to his original timeline, I think it is possible that Rick decided to freeze all of the timelines across all dimensions, not just for his own reasons, but perhaps also because of the Council of Ricks. My name is Deepcut, hit that subscribe button, and let's talk about whether or not Rick has frozen time in Rick and Morty. Before getting into portal travel, Rick lived happily with his wife and daughter. When he first fails at portal travel, he is visited by Prime Rick, who invented interdimensional portal travel already. Prime Rick is called such not because he is the first Rick to ever exist, I believe, but rather because he is the first one to travel to other dimensions. As he explained to our Rick, he believes that there is no one better than him out there, and that the only reason to create portal travel was to go meet his other selves and revel in how awesome and smart they are. Our Rick was a different Rick, as he said, one who seemed to be facing issues with who he was as a person, what his pursuit of science was doing to him, and thinking it may not be best for what he really wants, which was just to have fun with his family. Prime Rick was the final piece of the puzzle for our Rick, making him realize that science just meant more time alone with himself, or even other versions of himself, and less time with his wife and daughter. Prime Rick would of course end up throwing a bomb into the garage of our Rick, blowing up his Beth and Diane. It is uncertain if this was done to kill Rick or to purposely kill his family, forcing him to invent portal travel like the rest of them, but I imagine it was actually the former, with Prime Rick not wanting any Ricks in existence who weren't aligned with him. This would ironically push Rick to finish the portal travel, with him possibly going off to live with another Diane and Beth in another dimension. However, if that did happen, we didn't see it, and it was probably very short-lived. Instead, most of his flashbacks show him focused on his search for Prime Rick, killing any other Ricks he has to while doing it, and also getting sucked into the regular adventures most Ricks get involved with their space government. C-137, the home dimension of our Rick, was set on something of a time loop. The people actually aged, but were stuck reliving the same day over and over again, and dying was apparently not an option, as it's only when Rick turns the loop off that his old neighbor finally passes away. This loop would have been going on for decades from when Rick was a relatively young man. Rick would spend most of his young life traveling the multiverse, looking for Prime Rick, who we now know to probably be responsible for the elaborate hideouts that the other Ricks were constructing already, not just to hide from our Rick, but from the many space governments that they started to piss off. Prime Rick would always escape, and our Rick would begin to lose himself in the meaninglessness of hunting down the many versions of himself from alternate realities. Seeking to end this interdimensional war, the Council of Ricks came together and offered some sort of peace treaty. Our Rick would not need peace for the sake of peace, and his endgame was of course still getting to Prime Rick. I believe Prime Rick was sold out by the Council of Ricks, and they gave our Rick the coordinates of Prime Rick's home dimension in exchange for completing the Citadel, as we can see in the flashbacks from the Season 5 finale. Our Rick would create the Citadel, agreed to a ceasefire, and would then go on to Prime Rick's dimension, where he would crash land in Beth's garage. At this point, our Rick had lived with other Beths and their children in other dimensions, as we can see in Season 1, when Rick gets taken hostage by the evil Rick being controlled by evil Morty. Here we can see that he has fond memories of taking care of a little Morty years ago, whereas the first Beth he was living with in the show says that Rick had only been back in their lives for 1 year since disappearing when she was a child. It makes sense that, whether hunting Prime Rick or just needing to lay low, Rick would eventually want to know what his future life could have been like if his daughter had never died. He never got a Morty in his own timeline, but he loved Beth and Diane more than anything. He's come to care for Prime Morty so much, who himself was abandoned by his Rick and never even got to meet him, Beth herself not having seen her own Rick since she was a kid, likely when Prime Rick first made his portal gun and decided to leave for good. We know that part of the reason the Citadel was built was not just to give the Ricks a hiding place from the many space governments, but also to create a barrier around what is referred to as the Central Finite Curve, a twist in the endless interdimensional spiral that has Ricks as the most intelligent beings in their universe. Outside of this Central Finite Curve, other beings more intelligent than Rick may exist and could pose a threat to them if they used interdimensional travel to try and start exploiting other realities. It would seem that part of our Rick's job was helping them to create this barrier while developing the Citadel, though its destruction in the Season 3 premiere didn't seem to affect the barrier. It was able to be removed in the Season 5 finale, as we saw, but only with Citadel technology, including parts that only our Rick had the information to, hence why Evil Morty needed to scan all of his memories. Considering he did create the Citadel, it seems weird that he not just was willing to destroy it in the Season 3 premiere, but also seemingly took joy in it, likely enjoying the fact that he still got C-137's coordinates while also destroying the thing that he gave the rest of the Ricks, wanting to see them suffer as well. In addition to this protective barrier, it is at this point I think it is possible that Rick also may have altered the way time works in their realities, similar to how he did in his home dimension. With the added technology and resources of the Citadel of Ricks, I think it's possible he created a new way to freeze time that doesn't have the same negative side effects like aging that we saw in Rick's home dimension. The War of the Ricks showed the Ricks just how easily their lives could end and just how little time they have left now that they're getting older. All Ricks seem to love adventure, whether it's on their own like Prime Rick or with a loving family like our Rick. I believe it may not have even been our Rick's idea to freeze time in these other dimensions, but instead, the Council of Ricks wanted this so they could have their never-ending multiverse adventure. With them locked out from any other intelligent beings outside of the finite curve, and time moving differently within it, they'd be able to live immortal lives with their families, going on adventures, collecting cool items, meeting alien women, and making cool science projects. Rick crash-landed in Prime Rick's dimension, hoping to eventually kill him, but fell in love with the idea of family again, and particularly his Morty. All through the series, he seems to be trying to teach Morty the benefit of just living life like this, not worrying about school, which Rick claims Morty won't need, and just finding cool new things to try and have fun together. If this wasn't something negotiated by the Council of Ricks back before the show started, I think at the very least it's something Rick decided to do at some point in the show, perhaps even thinking he can always just turn it off and let his family begin to grow again when he becomes bored of it, but in the meantime rationalizing that he created a never-ending childhood for his grandkids, a pretty nice lifestyle for his daughter, and tons of adventures to have along the way. If this was somehow tied to the Citadel and the barrier around the central finite curve, however, that could mean that Evil Morty destroying that barrier may have also reset the flow of time. Considering we just had the Portal Network also entirely rebooted, I think it is possible as well. But what do you guys think? Is it possible Rick is freezing time across all dimensions so that he and his family can keep up their adventures, or am I just overthinking something that happens in all long-running cartoons where characters don't really age? Of all the shows where this happens, Rick and Morty is the best setup to have a reason for them not aging, as even if this particular theory is wrong, he has the power to make this happen, so why not? But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.